So I'm totally not recording this review in the same sitting as the other one that I just did for the Wolf. I'm wearing a different shirt after all. So yeah, I absolutely needed to talk about this book too because it's kind of like hashtag relatable. um, this book is called Every Last Word. Um, it's recommended to me by one of my coworkers who said it made her cry. So I was like, oh, sign me up. I need a book that makes me cry. I don't have enough of those in my life ever. So yeah, so I immediately checked it out, and lo and behold, this is what the cover looks like, by the way. I don't have a copy because I listened to it on audiobook. That's okay. So there you go. That's what the cover looks like. So I looked at the premise on the back and I was like, whoa, oh my gosh, this is about a girl with OCD. I immediately was like, must read, obviously. So, and I was, and then secondarily, I was like, well, where have I, heard that before, other than like my own life and personal growth books that I've read. But like, I thought of like John Green's Turtles All the Way Down, and he has a high school teenage girl who suffers from OCD in that, and I'm trying to think of whether I thought that book, I guess, was relatable in a lot of ways, but I don't know. John Green, sort of, as much as I love him, and I do, he sort of shied away from ever using the term obsessive compulsive disorder in his novel. I don't know why. He always just says the term thought spirals. This book doesn't shy away from that. I also have to mention that the author's name is Tamara Ireland Stone, which is an awesome name because her middle name, I guess, is Ireland. That's really epic. But anyway, she seems to have done a lot of research on OCD for this novel, for just anxiety disorders in general, and for like the practice of psychiatry. So that's great. It's just I feel like John Green was a little too close to the material. It was like a sensitive subject to say OCD or obsessive compulsive disorder. Maybe not. He says it all the time in his vlogs on his channel. But I felt like, I don't know. This author doesn't actually suffer for that, but she did a fantastic job of researching it and writing a believable character in the character of Samantha, aka Sam. So yeah. Where to begin? Where to begin? So Samantha, Sam, she's kind of like in this clique, this Mean Girls-ish clique with the popular girls in school. And she doesn't really feel like she fits in, but they're like the friends she's had since she was like in grade school or whatever. And so she kind of feels stuck with them. She kind of feels stuck in a rut with that and her OCD and hiding her OCD from her friends. And so she's looking for a way out of that. Like, she has a good psychiatrist. Her mother is very supportive, and everybody's trying to help her. She has a good support system in place to help her get through her rituals. Well, she doesn't really have rituals because this is based on a character who has pure OCD, so she doesn't really have physical rituals or cleaning rituals or anything like that. Not really. Because pure OCD is more on like thoughts and things, and intrusive thoughts that make you think bad things are going to happen. She does sort of have rituals because she's obsessed with and I can relate with like numbers and things like that, and liking numbers to be rounded up or rounded down, or like a certain number at a certain point. Like I'm this way with my bank accounts and things like that, of all things. But like she's like that with her car. So she has a car, and she has an obsession with the number 3. And so every time she like drives somewhere, the odometer she has to stop it on the number 3 because 3 is a good number. Why the number 3? Well, it does seem kind of arbitrary at first, but OCD is kind of like that. I mean, I can relate. Like, why do I pick certain rules in my head to follow in my life? I ask myself that every day. But there is actually kind of a formalistic sort of reason that by the end of the novel, I'm like, oh, well, let's just say, look at the front cover of the book. Look at every last word. I'm just gonna say that. That's one of the little hints there. But yeah, she's obsessed with the number 3, it's kind of her main obsession, and that is kind of a compulsion, is the having to drive around the block to get the odometer up to 3 before she can park. So it's not entirely, to me, like a pure O. That is a compulsion, is what I'm trying to say. But anyway, I'm getting off subject. I mean, not really. I mean, because that is kind of the premise, is that she's a girl with OCD, and she's trying to hide it. But there's also sort of like a Dead Poets Society thing kind of going on in this book, because she finds essentially a secret poetry club down in the basement of her school, which introduces her to a whole new group of friends. But primarily through a new friend that she meets, who leads her to the door to this place, whose name is Caroline. And Caroline is just this girl who she randomly meets in the halls one day, and Caroline is kind of like hip and cool and doesn't care what anybody thinks about her. I mean, she's not cool. She's like totally like the Losers Club or whatever. She's totally like one of the an outcast, somebody who her main friends, the mean girls as I keep calling them, would not approve of. But she's kind of Caroline is kind of a more artsy person who wears like plaid and doesn't wear makeup and looks kind of nerdy, and she's kind of like she's kind of like a theater kid. And so like Caroline is just a free spirit essentially. And so Samantha, as she calls herself, meets Caroline, who starts calling her Sam, and then Caroline leads Sam to the poetry club down in the basement of the theater in their school, where she's introduced to like this sort of open mic situation, which I was totally like, whoa, this is like college for me. This is like English club in college, or when I majored in English. This is kind of like when I discovered my passion for theater in high school, and how that got me out of my shell, which was essentially the shell of OCD and anxiety and being reclusive. And that's where this book hit home for me, is because the arts really do provide that outlet for freedom. Like once you have creative freedom and a group of people who approves of you for that, and is willing to listen to like your vulnerable, heartfelt material that you actually take the time to write down and have the courage to speak in front of a group, that's liberating, and that can heal you in so many different ways. And that's essentially the body of this book, the meat of this book, is that Sam finds healing in this club that Caroline leads her to, and the poets down there. And that's kind of like what happened in, like I said, Dead Poets Society. It's kind of like, I don't want to give too much away because there are twists and turns. There's sort of a Fight Club element to this, like it's a secret club of like, we don't talk about Fight Club or whatever. Like, well, it's sort of because this is a secret thing where no one else knows that they meet in the basement in this abandoned like closet down underneath the school, and it is sort of like that. But they're not fighting each other or anything. There's not really much of a competition, although there is tension, because when Sam first goes down there, the guy who opens the door for her is a guy who seems to not approve of her, this guy AJ, and she's wondering, what did I do wrong? Why won't you let me in? I'm not cool enough for your uncool club. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason that as soon as he sees her, he's like, whoa, what are you doing down here? And he kind of recognizes her from being part of the clique that she's a part of. But there's more to it than that, and that's kind of how the plot unfolds. Again, I won't give it away, but that is kind of like the driving force. She wants to know what she did wrong. She wants to distance herself from her past, and she kind of wants to distance herself from her friends who aren't really her friends when it comes down to it, because she's kind of like bottom tier of their friend group. Even within the clique, she's the one who gets left out when there aren't enough tickets or enough passes for like the one girl's, the Queen Bee's birthday party or whatever, when there's not, she's the first one to go, or she's the second one to go. I think she's second from the bottom, which is still not good, which is still an awful way to treat your friends. So yeah, it is a good story about a cliquey high school life, and how that intersects with mental health, and how that intersects with creativity and art and artistic expression, and how to learn how to be an artist and a writer. Yeah. A lot of this book hit home for me, and I can see why it would evoke tears. there's not really much I can talk about without giving away the twists or like the ending, and I won't do that because we don't do that here. But I do recommend it. I recommend it even if you're not in high school, if you remember what it was like to be in high school, or if you just suffer from anxiety or OCD, and even if you don't, even if you just appreciate stories about people who learn to free themselves creatively, this is the one for you. But I think it will hold a special place for people who actually can relate to the character, which I don't know. In my own life, I don't personally know a lot of people who suffer from my condition, which is OCD. So I do find it special when someone actually takes the time to write that experience down believably, and this knocked it out of the park. Yeah. And this story isn't all about OCD. There's parts where I forgot that, oh well, she's a character with OCD. You know, it's really a high school romance, high school drama sort of thing. But the mental health side of it does come back in a kind of unexpected way, to really add to the drama and the meaning of the book. So yeah, check it out. Read every last word of every last word, and I think you'll get something out of it. And take care of yourself. Make sure to practice self-care. Make sure you leave time to write the important stuff down.